Today we're going to be ranking the worst parts of every Doom game in id Software's iconic series, and ranking all of them in a tier list that goes from worst to best from S to F. If you find yourself enjoying this video, don't forget to hype so we can really push this in the algorithm and blow up the content. Anyways, without wasting any more of your time, let's get straight into the ranking. Now, kicking off this list, we have Doom 1, and before I continue, I just want to say that this game is virtually an ultimate tier game in every single metric. And trying to find something I genuinely didn't like was honestly quite the challenge. However, I'd be lying if I said this game was perfect, because the overall map and navigation features are easily the worst in the entire series. Words cannot truly describe just how terrible the maps are for all of the levels in this game, because they just feel so lazy, so half-assed, and so frustrating to navigate. I'm genuinely convinced there was zero effort put into any of these mini-maps, and trying to find any optional secrets or collectibles in this game is virtually impossible in Doom 1 just because of how messy and cluttered these mini-maps are. Now, to give id Software some credit, this is something they've absolutely improved on in recent entries to the point where it's almost perfected. However, there's still no denying that this is easily one of the most embarrassing attempts at a minimap in a video game. So, for all of those reasons, I'm going to put Doom 1's minimap in trash. Okay, so this one is probably gonna get me into a ton of crap, but dude, we have to talk about Doom 2's level design, because my god is the level design in this game inconsistent. Now, before I continue, I just have to clarify that most of this campaign is easily some of my favorite content in early Doom, because every single new weapon this game adds is great. The soundtrack is fantastic, and the additions to Doom 2's demon roster with the Archvile was fucking perfect. However, I'd be lying if I said this entire game was perfect, because some of the campaign missions here, and more specifically the level design, feels like a rushed, unsatisfying mess filled with maps that are way bigger than they had any right to be, and crappy encounter designs that makes me want to punch another hole in my fucking wall. Dude, the level design in this game is so fucking bad that you cannot even 100% the game without using cheats and exploits. Although, even with all of that said, I still think the majority of the content in Doom 2 is absolutely exceptional. So, for all of those reasons, I'm going to put Doom 2's level design in mid. Coming up next, we have Doom 64, and this one really pains me to say because I have so much nostalgia with this game. However, we cannot ignore the fact that Doom 64 has some pretty big problems we need to address. I think my biggest problem with Doom 64 by far is easily the atmosphere, which just falls completely flat in my opinion. And that's mainly because of that god-awful soundtrack and general aesthetic of the game. Instead of copying the previous two games in this series, Doom 64 attempted to adapt the Doom formula into more of an action horror approach. Now, don't get me wrong, I do appreciate how unique this game feels. I love how id Software tried to take the series in a different direction instead of just copying the greatness that came before. However, when reviewing this game in the context with the rest of the series, it's very apparent that this was easily one of the weaker entries just because of how experimental and inconsistent the experience was. Besides that one little nitpick, I still really do hold this game close to my heart just because of how many fun memories I had with it. Me and my dad quite literally used to play this game every single Friday after school in primary school and dude, those memories were just way too fucking iconic. So, for all of those reasons, I'm going to put Doom 64's atmosphere in mid. Okay, buddy, so this one was really difficult to rank because Doom 3 is easily the most experimental and ambitious game when it comes to bringing new ideas to the table. Doom 3 attempted to modernize the franchise by completely changing the formula into more of a horror-oriented experience, with a completely new roster of enemies and environments that makes the moment-to-moment gameplay feel so unsettling and tense, which is by far the best and worst thing about this entire experience. In my honest opinion, Doom 3 deviated way too far away from what made the Doom brand so iconic, to instead chase modern trends and copy popular FPS franchises like Half-Life and Halo. For example, the weapons and gunplay here feels mostly weak and inferior to make you feel grounded and weak when compared to the onslaught of demons. All of the demons you encounter are incredibly grotesque and horrifying to match the game's tone. And the pacing throughout the game's runtime feels incredibly inconsistent, with some of the levels feeling very uneventful and, dare I say, boring. Now, what I genuinely appreciate about Doom 3 is you can really see the impact and inspiration this game had on Doom 2016, when it comes to combining both action and horror elements perfectly. If it wasn't for Doom 3, this series probably would have gone in a completely different direction, so for that reason alone, I have to respect it. Doom 3 as a whole is a very inconsistent experiment with both amazing and questionable ideas. So, for all of those reasons, I'm going to put Doom 3's direction in epic. Now, coming up next, we have Doom 2016, and I'm just gonna say this right now, Doom 2016 is a fucking amazing game. This game has great enemies, great bosses, fantastic gunplay, and a really compelling campaign. However, the one thing I didn't like about this game, and I think everyone else can fundamentally agree, is the story. Because the story in Doom 2016 is very forgettable, very lame, and the cast of characters in this game really isn't that great. For example, the main villain in this game, Olivia Pierce, is one of the worst characters in this entire series in my opinion. She might genuinely be one of the most boring and forgettable villains I've ever gone up against in a video game. And to be perfectly transparent, I just didn't enjoy this ending, like, at all. It ends in such an abrupt and disappointing way. Like, dude, the ending to this game could have been so ridiculously fucking cool. And to be fair, we do get to see the Crucible, so I can't shit on the ending too hard. But then again, I feel like they could have gone so much harder for this ending, and the fact that we don't even get to see what happens after this point is just so fucking disappointing. So, for all of those reasons and countless more I probably didn't say, I'm going to put the story in Doom 2016 in amazing. Now, coming up next, we have Doom Eternal, and for this game, I really wanted to talk about the boss fights, because the bosses in this game are easily the most inconsistent thing about this entire experience. For example, some of the bosses in this game are great, are a spectacle, are genuinely some of the best moments in this entire series. However, some of the other bosses, like the Icon of Sin or the Khan Maker, are just kind of a letdown. I think it's really apparent that id Software really struggled to design bosses around Doom Eternal's gameplay, which is absolutely fair and I don't blame them at all. And I think what makes this even worse is the fact that the bosses in the DLCs are somehow worse than the base game. And don't worry, we're gonna get to that shit real soon. Now, to give the bosses in Doom Eternal a little bit of credit, I do think the Gladiator is by far the best boss in this entire game. And the introductory bosses with the Doom Hunters and the Marauder was done fantastically. So yeah, in conclusion, Doom Eternal's bosses are by far its biggest shortcoming, which is exactly why I'm going to put Doom Eternal's bosses in disappointing. Now, coming up next, and I really have to be careful with this one because, dude, I fucking cannot stand this entry, because for the Ancient Gods Part 1, we're talking about the new enemies they added in this DLC. I don't even know where to begin with this one, because every single enemy that was added in this DLC was terrible. Where the fuck do we even start? We have the turrets, which suck, the Bloodmakers, which are easily one of the worst fucking enemies in this entire series, and the spirits! Now, we've already talked about the spirits in depth. If you want to see that, watch this video. I nearly tear my fucking vocal cords ranking about this enemy. But for this list, I really want to talk about the Bloodmakers and the turrets, because these enemies are fucking terrible. First of all, the reason I hate the turrets so much is because you literally have to fucking stand still half of the time when you fight these things. These enemies aren't even that difficult. I don't think they've even killed me in this DLC, but the fact I have to literally fucking stand still and wait for their eyes to pop out, it's frustrating. And dude, don't even get me started on the fucking Bloodmakers. Those enemies are literally just the turrets, but 10 times worse. Because the Bloodmakers can literally stun you, which is almost always a death sentence. Dude, I could talk about these enemies all fucking day. They're easily one of the worst enemies in Doom history. But if I keep talking about them, I'm probably gonna snap my fucking vocal cords in half or give myself an even worse sickness. So, for all of those reasons and countless more I definitely didn't say, I'm going to put the enemies in the Ancient Gods Part 1 in trash. Oh, buddy, what a fucking letdown, dude. Coming up next, we have Davroth the Dark Lord, the King of Shit, in the Ancient Gods Part 2, because my fucking god was this boss fight a letdown. Dude, the Ancient Gods Part 2 had so much potential. This could have been one of the best DLCs in gaming history here. But somehow, id Software fumbled the bag and gave me one of the most disappointing DLCs I've ever played in my life. Like, dude, the Dark Lord had so much potential. This character could have been badass, could have been epic. This could have been the best boss in Doom, and it wouldn't have even been close. However, no. We don't get a compelling boss. We don't get an awesome final level. What we get, ladies and gentlemen, is a giant Marauder boss fight, which is obtuse, annoying, and really fucking frustrating. Now, to give this DLC a little bit of credit, the other two levels are fantastic. The World Spear is literally in my top 5 favorite levels in Doom Eternal, and Reclaimed Earth is a really cool level with some stunning environments. However, even with all of that said, I just can't look past the Dark Lord boss fight, man. That thing was a huge letdown. So, for all of those reasons, I'm going to put the Ancient Gods Part 2's Dark Lord boss fight in disappointing. Now, finishing off this list, and dude, before I continue, can you please hype and like the video? I've literally thrown up making this video. I'm like quite literally staring at my own fucking vomit right now. So if you could hype the video, I would really appreciate it. However, for Doom the Dark Ages, there really was a lot of options I could have picked. fact. I could have chose the skins, I could have chose the parry mechanics, I could have even chose the mech levels. But for Doom the Dark Ages, I really wanted to talk about those dragon levels because my goodness are these levels kind of a letdown. I think my main issue with these levels is just how repetitive they feel on those subsequent playthroughs. Because don't get me wrong, the first time you play Doom the Dark Ages, these levels are peak, they're badass, they're really fucking awesome. However, once you replay these levels like 4, 5, or even 6 times, they just completely lose all of their luster. I think what really would have improved the gameplay variety with these levels is if maybe we had a boss fight or two. I can't be the only one who was expecting a boss fight in one of these levels. Maybe I'm fucking crazy, but that seems way too obvious for me to include. And what sucks the most about the dragon levels is the fact that our dragon was quite literally fucking killed by Azrak. We're never gonna get one of these levels again, which just kind of sucks. It would have been really cool to see id Software listen to the criticism and improve on these issues in a DLC. But because the dragon is dead, we're never gonna get that unless the Slayer just uses a different dragon, which I really hope happens. So, for all of those reasons and countless more I probably didn't say, I'm going to put the dragon levels in Doom the Dark Ages in Ultimate. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching the video, I greatly appreciate it. Listen, this video was a little all over the place in terms of how it was recorded, how it was edited, I know it wasn't very consistent. But then again, if you really enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more Doom content in the future, that would be greatly appreciated. And with that said, I hope you have a fantastic day, please take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next week. Take care.